So wait, I'm too sick to do it. Actually, I
So
can't do
wow, we just watched Rebel Moon.
it. Yep, we did. We did just watch Rebel Moon, and we thought, why not get on here and give some of our thoughts? You know, modern day Ebert and Roper, Abbott and Costello. You know, Tyson and Moyer just coming at you with some review points for Rebel Moon. So yeah. I guess before we get going, kind of just say what you overall thought about it.
I think we have to address the elephant in the room first before we get to that, right?
Which is what?
Which is the fact that this film was given quite possibly the lowest review score I've ever seen in my fucking life.
What is it?
So, dude, I've never seen a film given this low of a score off the bat. Like, someone in Hollywood hates Zack Snyder so much, and I wonder who it is, dude.
Because I could see why, and for those listening, I think it started at about a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. Full disclosure, I think anyone who judges how good a movie may or may not be from Rotten Tomatoes, their opinion can be discarded immediately. That's just not someone I want to talk to movies about, especially since I'm not the biggest movie fan on the planet. But when I see it, I want to see it for myself. But just for conversational purposes, the movie debuted with a 9%. And whatever issues we're going to bring up that we may have with this movie, I don't care if you hate Zack Snyder and you hate sci-fi and you hate, I don't know, let's just say high sci-fi fantasy epics that this is at least trying to be. This is not that.
It doesn't deserve 9 fucking percent. Like,
no, that's just so. That is so over the top. You know,
9% would be like if you recorded the entire film with like an iPhone or something like that.
Yeah. You get, maybe when there is eventually over the next week a pornographic parody of this, then maybe that could get down to 9%. But I think the fun thing we can do is we can talk about it, and then at the end we'll give we'll do out of 10. You know, I thought it was interesting. I was like, you know what? Ebert and Roper did thumbs up, like 1 thumb up and 1 down, or 1 up and 0 down and 2 thumbs up. I thought that was an interesting way to kind of classify a movie, but I think 10 gives you enough to move around in there. You know, it reminds me when I was younger, I'd read IGN game reviews and it'd always be out of 10, and I'm like, that feels right. You know, that feels right. So we'll give our number reviews towards the end. I heard
a counter argument against the 10 system, because if you give people out of 10, they can get lazy and just say, oh yeah, it's a 5. Like, they'll just default to 5 if it's like an average film. Where if you have an out of 4, you're forced to pick either, like, if you want to go in the middle, you're forced to pick either 2 or 3. And that says something about, like, the film, you know?
I think you're right, because it leaves a lot of room, and maybe this is because of paid reviews, but it leaves a lot of room to say something's bad, but you still give it a 5, so it doesn't look like it's getting absolutely torched. A movie that's a 5 to a 6 out of 10, to me, is probably an okay movie that you found enjoyment out of. When you're getting to the 1s, 2s, and 3s, that's you really earnestly saying, this is a terrible movie. This is not a good movie. But for some reason, and this is actually a classic internet joke, it's like, I hated it. 5 out of 10. You know, that it's like that is something that people would say all the time. I always thought that was funny. You know, so
if I'm being honest, just me going to the cinema itself probably adds like 3 points onto like any film. Like, if I saw like a dog shit 2 out of 10 film, but it was like in a nice cinema, comfy seat, good sound design, I probably would walk away like, it wasn't that bad. It was still a good experience, you know?
When you're immersed in theaters, and I think that's part of the reason why there's some lack of credibility in the movie industry right now, is that viewers aren't really putting in the effort to see movies that they're not rising up to the effort that directors and movie makers are making to make these films. They just sit on their couches and watch them. There used to be kind of something, and maybe we could touch on this at a later time. It used to be reciprocal, you know? We go to theaters and put money into theaters, buy the food, sit down and get immersed in your movies so you can make these great experiences for us. It's not like that anymore. It says, maybe I'll catch it at 9 p.m. on a Friday on my couch for free on Netflix after paying $10 a month. Oh, and you also want movie theater caliber grade movies on top of that. What else would you like, sir? Like delivered to your television? It just I don't know. Maybe there's something right?
I don't think the onus is on the consumer. I think it's on the producers for this one. Like you don't think that Netflix and the industry would just prefer that we sit at home so they can crank out as much like B tier shit so they can just feed us that instead of like producing high tier stuff,
Yeah, I think that is a good point because there's probably a cost benefit of that at the end of the day. Especially when you have people like Tom Cruise taking gigantic risks on movies like Mission Impossible Part 1 that in the long run, I think that lost money or at least underperformed. It probably cleared its cost, but who knows, right? So yeah, that's something to kind of dive further into the way that movies have changed. But we're talking about one specifically today, and that's Rebel Moon. So it just came out today, and I've been a little sick the last week. I don't usually catch myself on the couch watching things. Like you said, I like going to the movie theaters. If there's something I vaguely want to see, for instance, I'm going to see Aquaman 2 next week. That movie's going to suck. The first one sucked, but I find reasons to go to the theaters because I like the experience. I actually rarely watch television shows or movies on my couch, if at all. I usually just leave on ghost hunting shows all day, but I sat my ass down and listened to Zack Snyder and what he had to say today. So I have a lot to jump into with this movie, and I'm kind of fresh off of it, but I'm interested to hear just kind of your first thoughts, and then I'll let it rip. So what'd you think on your first watch through?
So I'm going to paint a broad stroke off the bat and just say I really, really enjoy when sci-fi is mixed with mysticism. When you have
that's
spaceships,
probably why you like Dune, right?
Of course, yeah. When you have spaceships, galactic communities, like different planets, all that, but then you mix that with the mythology of like a king, like a magical like royal bloodline. There's something about that. It really speaks to me. I love that shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this movie was a really good lesson in managing expectations. So when a lot of people went and saw this movie, and this is what every review or snippet I saw on Twitter was going into this, was it tries to be like Star Wars in this way, or how is this supposed to be the next? Okay, but put that away for a second. Let's pretend that Zack Snyder never said that in an interview, and he never made a pitch to Disney, and that didn't get approved, and this was just his original IP that was put onto Netflix. Okay, so and first off, after watching it through, yes, there are some tributes or nods to Star Wars, but it really doesn't follow the same formula. It follows a typical action movie formula, a hero's journey formula that Star Wars does, or most other movies that are created. But there's actually a lot here and a lot that sets it apart from that. But I think if people went into this movie without those kind of expectations for it to be the next Star Wars, there's really a lot there. And something that I want to point out, and this probably might be one of the most important things I say in this episode, is making an original high fantasy sci-fi epic is extremely difficult. Extremely difficult because it's already been done in a lot of different ways. So I don't know if you remember this, but it was kind of they were coming down off their success of The Matrix, and the Wachowskis did Jupiter Ascending, which was a huge, and it got obliterated. This was a high sci-fi epic that did not live up to some expectations. I bet looking back, it might have aged gracefully. I haven't seen it in quite some time. But another example of this, and it just a really high production value science fiction fantasy adventure, was John Carter by Disney, which flopped spectacularly. And I don't think that was an original IP, but it was still a really ambitious fantasy project that put Disney in a huge hole for a while.
I get what you're saying. It's like, just to make a high sci-fi fantasy film, just the technical requirements alone for that would put any director, at like max strain level. But you add on top of that the requirement that it has to be original and like different from the stuff that came before it. It's like, damn, that seems like a pretty fucking impossible task, right?
It does. And, you know, he had some inspiration to draw off of, and he definitely had some ideas in his own head, and he kind of combined the two. So I think a good place to start for me, at least, because I'm only human, and maybe this is a problem with myself, but I tend to find the errors in things instead of the positives or the things that went right. So I'll start with my positives for this. And one of the things that I think I got over quickly was a lot of people said there were parallels to Star Wars. Right off the bat, I thought there were some really interesting things that kind of made it a little different. The one thing is that Luke's journey in Star Wars is that he eventually wants to get off his planet. And the main character, Kora, who I think she acts the part as well as she could. I'll get to my dialogue issues later. This main character, Kora, she wants to stay where she is. She's angry because the world is coming to her, not that she's has to remain on this planet. So she wants to live this simple life where she's connected to the earth. You can see the way she grabs the dirt in one of the first scenes in the movie. She wants to live on land, and that's what's important to her. But there's also a second part where she has this leftover empathy for the main villain, Empire, kind of this galactic conquest that she was a part of, you know, second or third to the king as far as a security detail. She still has that inside of her as well, where she kind of talks about the old princess who passed away, and I don't think we got clear resolution on that. But I really thought that there was a character that was set apart from Luke immediately. And then, you know, people say that the blonde character that betrays them with the Irish accent, the intergalactic Irish accent, of course, kind of betrays them, and everyone's like, oh, well, that's Han Solo. So that's not Han Solo. Like, Han Solo had a heart of gold. This guy was just a scummy marauder, you know, who sold them out behind their backs, you know. And you know, and people say like, well, there's a C-3PO character. C-3PO was a fucking coward in Star Wars. If you rewatch that, the other one had like this loyalty to this empire that he used to be a part of, or one that he's still a part of, but he sees it changing, you know. And I liked that. The idea of a fallen king in his kingdom, how this empire is kind of rudderless, and that means they're defaulting to like misguided moralities or no morality whatsoever, and there's still relics of that old empire left behind with honor, like that black character that they rescued from the Colosseum and the robot. You know, I thought it was interesting, and it gave this kind of humanity to the Empire in a bad way too, because they're like a bunch of jarhead Marines, you know. In Star Wars, they were a bunch of just faceless stormtroopers who couldn't hit anything, and they had to reverse engineer some backstory about how they used to be clones, but actually the clones rebelled, and then they ended up using normal people to enlist in the Empire. So they're just a bunch of jarhead idiots that have kind of lost their way, and there's a lack of honor within them. And I thought there were a lot of interesting things there to kind of dig into. They didn't dig into them too much, and we'll talk about later how there's supposedly an extended version of it, but I thought there was some good stuff there. I like the way the robots moved. They were like, you know, the ones that kidnapped people, or the way that the main robot moved too, and you kind of felt the strength, the tensile nature of these robots, and like, you know, they're like sturdy kind of brutalist, you know, machines. But yeah, I thought there was a lot of, as far as world building goes, it was there. You know, I kind of felt it like when they were on that first planet where you could see that Saturn, that ringed planet in the background, super close up to them.
How sick was that? That
was great.
Right? Yeah.
That was great, and the way it like left a red shade on everything, or a brown shade on that planet. So yeah, it was. I thought there was some stuff there that definitely moved it along. And but before I let you go, I'll just say, and this is expected from Snyder because he has he definitely has his own signature style when it comes to action. No matter what, and this is why it shouldn't be a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. At the very least, it's hard to say you don't like the action in this movie. The action alone will get you to a 20 or a 30. I really enjoyed the fight scenes. And you know what? There wasn't a lot of downtime. Nowadays, when you go to movies or you watch TV shows, it's 7 episodes of nothing, especially on Disney Plus. It's 7 episodes of nothing and then a fight at the end and then you're done. It seemed like, as many pacing problems as the show had, there was enough to keep you engaged, even if you don't like much of what was going on. So I was fine with it. I love the action. That was interesting. I like the weapons and I like the way that Kora moved. And I think that, I think there was enough there, especially to get it going into a part 2. But yeah, what are some initial positives you had in mind, after watching this?
So off the bat, I really, really like Snyder's visuals, and I think Snyder's one of the only directors where you could tell like he's going for sort of like a cartoonish, fantastical aesthetic, but he does it so well though. Like, you can tell that what you're seeing is not reality and it never will be reality, but you sort of believe it because the way he makes it look, it really sells you on the point. It's everything's cohesive. It looks fantastic as well. And, a thought that popped up is like, this is what Starfield, the game, should have looked like in the first place, They
bring Starfield into it.
Yeah.
That is, yeah. Well, what?
And also, Snyder, I've noticed that Snyder really has like a lot of good ideas. I love the fact that he tried to show humanity in the robot. I love that. I love the trope where like a villain massacres a planet but then spares a child and takes that child as his own. I fucking love that trope. The thing that really bugs me is that when I see Snyder put out these good ideas, they're all executed to the point where they're almost good, but they're held back by one or two things. And for Snyder, those things, for me at least, are the dialogue and the corny effects.
We get
right?
Dialogue for sure.
So my prescription, I think, is that I feel like Snyder would pop the fuck off if he was given a co-director for all future films. So if Snyder teamed up with like, I don't know, Paul Thomas Anderson or even like Tarantino, where Snyder would handle all the dialogue, all the visuals, the cinematography, and then the co-director just purely handles the acting direction and the dialogue. I think that would be a fucking dream team, honestly.
I was thinking about it, and we've definitely talked about this before offline, but I think Snyder, and before I say this, Nolan obviously is a much greater talent than Snyder, but they're both great in their own rights. They both suffer from that issue where they can't truly connect with their characters and fleshing them out. They can make incredible movies with great visuals, and I think they're, as far as steering large grand scale ships goes, pretend the movie is just a giant ship, they can see the big picture, they can put the big picture into action. But when it comes with the nuances of fleshing out characters and getting what they need out of actors through whether it be dialogue or physical mannerisms, I don't think they're truly think about what is that, the Ra's al Ghul chick dying in the third Batman movie where she just goes and someone was trying to say, oh, Nolan just likes when they only get things done in one take. It's like, okay, well, that was terrible. What do you want me to say about that? That was terrible. But I think Zack Snyder kind of suffers from that same issue. It's like, I like everything that's going on right now, but I don't know how to get into these characters. I don't really know how to get into them.
A thought that kept popping up in my head when I was watching these characters is like, it's almost, the vibe I got from them was, it's like they're screaming, look at me, I'm acting, and it's like, and it's like, man, this scene would have been so good if they were just like acting well, but they weren't, and that docks a few points for me,
Yeah, it's so funny. I have a good friend that says that all the time when people are really, when actors are going all out during a movie. He'll always go, "I'm acting! I'm acting!" You know, it's just pointing it out how ridiculous it is. Sometimes, that's why I laughed when he said, I'm like, that's exactly what my friend says. But this movie, and I don't know if this is a recent problem or it's something that's kind of come along after the, let's just say, Disneyification or the self-aware nature that's kind of implicit in movies all the time, where they explain situations, where they say, here's what's happening to me now. Wow, that's crazy. Or explaining jokes, or kind of, you know, fourth walling it with the audience in different kinds of ways. But this movie, I'm sorry, I can't stand it. But I'm having real issues with exposition in this movie, over exposition. That's probably one of my biggest problems, is that Zack Snyder tells a really good story and the visuals carry it along. You know what would be better? If a lot of these people in this movie talked less. I think if they talked less and had less lines to sound jagged and frumpy with, you'd actually have a more cohesive experience. So, for instance, when Kora first reveals that she's, you know, not a superhero, but she's got amazing combat skills, you know, I don't think they yet know that she came from the Empire or anything like that. But when she first kills all those men who are trying to rape that girl, she shoots the last guy, or it's before she shoots the last guy. I think it was after that. She looks up at everyone and goes, "We're going to have to fight." It's like, what? Excuse me? Who are you? You're not talking to them. You're definitely talking to the camera when you say that. It's like in this book I read, Culture of Narcissism, is that people these days, since the advent of the camcorder or reality TV even, people act like they're being recorded all the time in real life. They pretend they're on television shows. To me, that's what she's doing in that segment. It's like pretending she's on it. We're going to have to fight. It reminded me of, there was one season of The Walking Dead towards the end where Rick had finally kind of lost his way. He was becoming the monster he didn't always want to be. He had to execute this man who like betrayed this colony. And towards the end of the season, he's just standing over this man with a pistol at his head. And one of his original friends, Morgan, from the first season of the show, happens to find his way to Rick. And Rick and Morgan Morgan stares at them, Rick stares at him. They're all just looking at each other, and the situation speaks for itself. No one needs to say anything. Imagine in the gravity of that moment where she killed everyone. You can feel that townspeople are like, oh man, we're really getting pulled into it now. And she feels that visceral part of herself coming out again. And she's not comfortable with it because she just wanted a peaceful life. There are better ways to say and show that, you know, the old phrase, show, don't tell, than her saying, we're going to have to fight, you know? And then she gives this really long, drawn-out story about how she used to be in the Empire, and she was a top guard, and she was then a part of an elite security. It's like, half that story, you didn't even need her saying anything. You could have just said, we fought hard, or I was part of this group, or I was taken by them. Instead, it's, then.
I had this thought, right? Like, and I agree with, like, your thing on, like, there's too much exposition. But there was a way that they could have had the same amount of exposition, but still have it done tastefully. So I was thinking back to the scene where, like, at the start, where, you know, this robot, he gets like booted up and then gets bullied a little bit, goes to the river, and then he like launches a fucking mega exposition at this girl that like sits down next to him. and I'm like, you know, this would be pretty cool if it wasn't the robot or a character doing exposition, but if it was just a voiceover, you know, that would be okay.
A voiceover,
yeah. And like when Kora's like explaining how she got her skills and her history. Imagine like if a voiceover was doing that. I think that would be perfectly fine. In my case, you know.
Yeah, I never thought about it from the perspective of a voiceover, but I was just more thinking like the robot could say something ominous, like, the Empire wasn't always like this. You know what I mean? So something just that sticks a little more instead of, well, the prince, you were my... And it's like, all right, well, thanks for that.
Well, you have to remember, these are Netflix viewers that they're trying to cater to. So they're not the best tool of the shed, you know?
Yeah, that's true. I guess I expect too much, right? But it's just in a movie where you have such flowing, effortless action and, you know, some solid visuals. I'm not saying don't try, but you really just need to say less at that point. And you know what? Give that main girl, Sophia Boutella, Kora, just give her room to act, give her room to improvise, you know, give her room to kind of give herself gravitas instead of giving her these just clunky parts and clunky pieces of dialogue. And you know, that was something that kind of stuck with me too throughout the movie, is that Kora's a really cool character. And maybe they'll do more of her in the second one, or maybe because there's another cut, which is ridiculous that I even have to discuss that. They'll kind of dive into the push and internal pull going on in herself, how she used to be part of this organization, and then she left for a better life, and she has to fight these people that used to be her brothers, really, and kill them, and you know, while still protecting this farm group that she had an affinity for. I think there could be like a lot there to kind of jump into, but instead I feel like we got a really typical typecast. I'm a great female protagonist who always knows what's going on. We need to go here, here, and here, do this. You guys don't, you know, that scene where they're trying to, you know, Snyder's obviously inspired by Westerns in the same way Lucas was. There's a lot of Seventh Samurai going on. It is essentially Seven Samurai in a lot of ways, but she's like, you guys got one chance to get out of here. And it's like, why you got, like, why she have to say that? Or why she have to be just this perfect girl that's always ready for any type of situation? It's kind of, it's lame. It's lame, and this was supposed to be an answer to Star Wars.
I don't really mind if a person is like a Mary Sue or Gary Stu, like they're just like loaded with plot armor and all that. I don't really mind that.
I don't mind plot armor. You're right.
Because like, you know, when you go to see fantasy movie, you're trying to escape, and it is kind of cool to see a person like overcome like impossible odds and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
My gripe is just that it could have been done so much better. You know, if we just had someone like Tarantino to come in and restrain Snyder and just say like, no, we're not having the character say that, or why don't you just do this instead of do that? You know, I think it could have been a phenomenal film. You know.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there, but what I'm more looking for is just a bit of vulnerability. You know, I would like vulnerability shows character growth, and I'm not sure where her character growth was here. And it's funny because the guy farmer who was sidelined for most of the movie, the very good looking farmer man, you know, yeah. he was sidelined for a lot of the movie, just kind of standing around. He overcomes great odds to make that leap to you know, instead of jabbing and paralyzing Kora, he turns around and kills the guy who betrayed them. That was a really good moment for that character, but I felt like there wasn't enough in the background kind of showing him as a coward or a farmer who's not cut out for this through the whole movie. They needed to kind of jump into that a little bit more, and I think they needed to cut into Kora's grief from her past and being unsure about bringing this Leviathan down upon them by her small actions that went on in this village, from saving that girl from getting raped. I think that's Snyder's fault. I don't think that's the actor's fault. I think they can only work with what they're given. But I just think there was more room there. And you know what?
I guess some would say like... Go ahead. Some would say like... I mean, Rebel Moon is a 2-part series, so perhaps we see the stuff you're asking for in the second part. Because I guess like her arc is like it makes sense that her arc would be longer and more of a journey than other characters, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it's insulting that I have to talk about this movie in the context of there possibly being a longer version of it, which is what I'm reading. They're saying, oh, well, there's an extended version that they haven't released that apparently cuts into a lot more of the character growth. And unfortunately, that's what ended up being the case with the Snyder cut of Justice League, right? So,
which was a banger, unfortunately.
There's nothing you can do about that. I loved it. What was that movie? 3.5 hours? That was the shortest 3.5 hours of my life. I enjoyed it. You
watched the whole thing in one go?
Oh yeah. Yep. Sat there and watched the entire thing.
I saw this post on Twitter like, if you watch here and you stop at this exact second, you can like break it up in like 4 episodes, and I did that.
Oh, that's true. That was one way that a lot of people were doing that. Here's something that I thought, and I didn't really delve too far into it in my own mind. But do you think this would have functioned better as a television show than a movie?
No, this was a good movie. It was good in the movie format. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's kind of where I was going to, because I thought if it were a show, what would be the episodic cliffhanger week to week? You know what I mean? Probably, yeah.
If they wanted to make it a show, they would really have to flesh out the part where they try and gather people. So if they
which was ridiculous, by the way.
If they want to do something like, like one episode a week, and this week they try to recruit this person, and they dedicate an entire episode to it, I can see if they want to do that, they can make like a really like long build up to the final battle. That would be the only way I could see it being a series, but it was okay in the movie format. I feel like they didn't waste that much time, and it was sufficient what they did with like the recruiting scenes and all that. I really want to talk about like the politics around the movie, and it's sad that we have to do this for most films these days. But how did you feel about the fucking late diversity casting and women casting and all that?
In what set? You know what? I'll try and draw what I can out of that. So I guess you're talking about Kora, maybe, mainly.
Yeah, because like a lot of like the discourse these days is about like how of course they would cast like a woman to like be the main, and like a woman can't take down a man like that. And I was thinking, if this movie set in the far future, and also like this is set in the far future, right? Where I guess there would be cybernetic arguments, and if you do have like cybernetic enhancements, that would erase any physical gaps between men and women. So it's not really like that out of like she's from the Empire, she's like a super soldier. Is it really that out of character for her to like?
I don't even need that kind of explanation. Yeah. I think people who are hungry for those kind of explanations aren't being imaginative. So, okay, I'll say this, and I'm going to bring it up a lot. And I thought it was something I thought up on my own, but it's apparently an age-old phrase in the review circle. Nobody cares how Batman inflates the tires on the Batmobile. You just care that the Batmobile works, right? So people who like to say things like, well, how did he get it all the way there? Or why does it, if a car jumped out of the air like that, you're watching a movie, and if you can't suspend your belief for the entirety of it, then I'm sorry. We just have we are watching this movie on a fundamentally disagreeable level. So one of those things here are the psychological differences or physical differences between physical differences between a man and a woman. Here's why a woman could really, in most instances, except for some outliers, beat up a man. So it's not real. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. So what I'm here to tell you, and to kind of answer your question, I like hot girls. Okay? And it's a famous quote by a quarterback in American football who everyone suspected was gay, Aaron Rodgers, and he was asked on a radio show, and he said, I really, really like women, and it was super unconvincing. He like dated Olivia Munn for a while. I don't know if I said his name, but it was Aaron Rodgers. He's a quarterback for the Jets now, which is mind-blowing.
Wait, it was Olivia Munn?
He dated Olivia Munn for a little while, yeah.
Oh, that's a done deal. She's like a beard for most people, right?
Yes, but also he dated Danica Patrick. She's a famous drag racer who it's just like, come on, bro. And then he dated some like minor character from Girl Next Door. I forget what it was from, but yeah, his portfolio of dating hardly screams straight. We'll just say. So. But that's what I sounded like when I said that. When I said I like hot girl. But listen, I like attractive women. I find Sophia Patel attractive. I like seeing people get beat up. So seeing a fit, attractive woman beating people up and shooting them is good for me. I enjoy that. I don't sit there and see that and think a woman couldn't move a gun like that. It requires this much strength, or she couldn't kick a guy in the leg like that. And I'm not thinking that when I'm watching a movie. So if you're talking about a woman being cast in this role, I'm fine with it, and I'm fine with her physically being able to do what she does. The thing that bothers me is that women are these intuitional, feminine creatures that like really have a present mind in life that men don't have. And for some reason, people don't want to bring that out of female characters in movies unless it's a movie meant to be about that, like Little Women or something. But there's so many things to explore with a feminine or a female soldier stolen from her homeland, besides just her saying like, we're gonna have to fight, or you got 10 seconds to leave. It's like, no, there's a lot more really interesting things you can do with that, kind of leaning into it being
they could have fleshed out when she lost her first boyfriend in the war, right?
Yeah, what is that? That's great, you know. And obviously what I'm really excited to see is that she became security guard to that princess, that ended up kind of giving her a great perspective on what it means to lead and the importance of a leader in a monarchy, which this movie was kind of a veiled nod to monarchy in general. I think Zack Snyder,
that scene bugged me so fucking much.
Which one? Where the king said
scene
that?
where the princess like gives life back to the bird. That bugged me so much because that's such an obvious scene where like if any other director was with Snyder, they'd be like, dude, just relax on the special effects. Like, if they brought someone like Tarantino in, or literally anyone, you could have done that scene so much more tastefully. Like, in the scene, right, where Snyder originally directed it, she, like, grabs the bird and, like, a glowing white light comes from her hands, and the bird comes back to life. If they could have done that so much more tastefully, if, like, let's say she grabs the bird, she cups her hands around it, and then she leaves the bird in the snow, and then they wake up next morning, and then the bird's gone, and they see it, like, in a nest with, like, some kids. Like, it takes subtlety, and that's why I keep going back to, like, Snyder needs a co-director to, like, make him more subtle when he lays on the special effects. Especially, like, even like the slow-mo. Like, the slow motion was, like, egregious at some point. It's like, okay, you don't need to, like, have the, like, 50% of this fucking fight in slow motion. Just relax on that, you know?
I kind of like that, because then you're soaking in everything around you, and it's kind of meant to imitate adrenaline, where the world slows down, you know, when you're in a fight. Maybe, but I'm giving him too much credit. But I think you picked a good word right there, subtlety. I think that is something that you should be aware of. And you know what? And I'll give him... This might be me putting words in his creative mouth, but I think that scene wasn't meant to be literal, where the bird comes back to life. I think she was trying to explain that the princess, there was something special about the princess, but they showed it literally, but she didn't say, and as she was telling the story, she brought this bird back to life. So I don't know if maybe there was something smarter going on there that some people made him. There isn't.
It's Netflix,
okay, you're
so
right. You're right. You're right. And I make that mistake all the time. I've made a lot of excuses for some movies that we disagree on, especially Oppenheimer, which will be the great debate later on. But what I was mainly getting at was, I can't wait to see how, while she was the security detail for the king and his daughter, how they died. And she probably feels guilt because she did like that princess. Here's something that I missed, though. Are we supposed to know who the Scar Giver is and why she's the Scar Giver? Yeah. So what did the Scar Giver do?
No, that's probably a setup for part 2, I guess.
So we don't know what that is yet, or why she is that. Like, I was starting to think, is the Scar Giver the person who killed the king and his family, and that's her for some reason? And I don't know why she'd do that, because she obviously loved the princess. So I don't know if I was missing something there, but I think that's going to be a part 2 story. And I think what you're saying, that'll probably flesh out Kora's character a lot more. So.
Yeah. Looking back into it, you know, we have a lot of criticisms, but it's really easy for me to watch a film and then just drop it like halfway. Like, I've dropped a lot in a lot of TV shows,
especially on Netflix,
and,
it's very
and movies like 10 minutes or 15 minutes in. So the fact that it could capture me the entire time says that, you know, it has its flaws, but overall it was a good time. You know, the plot was good. I even liked the twist where, you know, the guy reveals himself to be the bad guy, even though I could see it coming. It was still done well. You know, I liked it.
I didn't.
Really?
That's how much I turn my brain off when I watch movies. Yeah, I don't even want to know. I'm just there for the ride, you know? So, yeah, I barely knew it. But you know what? I thought it was kind of cool how she was this is again, and this is my big problem, especially with the Disney generation that we're in. People aren't having sex in these movies anymore. People aren't hooking up. People aren't even kissing. I'm like, Kora obviously has the hots for someone in this movie, whether it's the farmer or the guy that betrayed them. But one of that scenes right before he turned them in, she was getting a little steamy with him. She liked his style.
Wow.
You know.
Probably our first major disagree. I think this film is good because it has as little sex as possible. I would prefer even less if possible. You know.
Less? There is no less. What? Like, you don't even want them to give, wistful glances to each other?
Just don't even mention it. Don't treat it like it doesn't exist,
I had to go through 3 sexless dude, in Star Wars, him and Natalie Portman were banging around, we're kissing sisters, we're all over the place, and then I have to go through a whole sequel trilogy of no one doing anything but a canonically platonic kiss at the end of the worst Star Wars movie ever made. Come, I'm hungry here. That boy's starving. I'm starving. Give me something, right?
If you want
especially if it's the adult Star Wars, right?
If you want a romance film, go watch a romance film. I'm so sick of directors forcing in like a forced romance into like an action.
It doesn't need to be forced. She obviously. Well, you know what? I think in part 2, there's going to be some feelings. You didn't like when she was on the ship, kind of eyeing up the guy, sweet talker, being like, "Yeah, I think I do want to fight in this war." Then before he betrays them, I was like, I hated it. She was like,
I want zero sex in action films. If I want,
you just don't want anyone getting any. You're just
no.
bitter.
If I want the kissy shit, I'll watch a romance film. That's what they're for. I don't like the mixture, and I feel like when they introduce the mixture of romance and action, it becomes tacky and it becomes just a worse film overall.
Do you know how much more engaging that movie would have been if Kora banged someone? That would have been great.
It would have reduced my rating for it by 2 points if that happened.
Wow. She's unsure about what she's doing for the Empire. She doesn't know how she can handle all these people, and protect this farm village. And she needs to protect her feelings, but she also wants to let someone in because she's been alone for so long. And now might be the day that they die tomorrow when they go and nothing. That's nothing. You don't want anyone doing anything.
Maybe I'm just jaded because I've seen so many films that supposedly are action, but then they have a romance facet of that as well. But you're telling me that you can't do that platonically, like what you just discussed? Like, yeah, Kora has all these fears. She's unsure whether she can fulfill that. Why can't you do that platonically? Why can't you just show like good kinsmanship between two people without having them running the bone?
That's not real life. When people are in the military
together,
this is a movie as well. Women are chicken rotisseries. What?
It doesn't have. This is a movie as well. It doesn't have to be real life. Why can't you show the goodness of the spirit of humanity without?
I guess you want to keep
having
it
your Venus,
I guess you just want to keep it wholesome then, which is fine. But I'm sorry. In part 2, there better be some people getting on. And you know what? When you're in a rebellion and you're having a potentially life-ending battle the next day, I hope you get none. I hope you don't.
Oh, trust me, I won't even be looking for it. I won't even be looking. I'll be with the generals swagging out okay, so what if we attack from here?
Dude, when that rebel girl with the some cool eyeshadow is looking you up and down, you will fold immediately. You'll fold immediately. So.
She looks busted, dude. What are you talking about?
I'm not talking about the one in the movie. I'm just saying one in general.
Oh, okay.
Not the one with the short hair in the movie that's in their group now.
I do like that idea.
All right, we'll put it this way. Did you think Kora was hot? Because I think that actress is... I'm a sucker for distinctive features, and I find hers pretty distinct. So find her very attractive. And she's in great shape, too. And they were showing a bit of her, too. It's fine with that.
You know what's weird? I can recognize that she's attractive, but personally, she does nothing for me.
You know what's funny? I feel that same exact way about Margot Robbie. Isn't that insane?
I feel the same way about Margot Robbie as well.
Do you really? Yeah, because I'm like, well, this just looks like when you imagine what the typecast hot girl is, this is what it is. It's like I'm looking at a stock photo. You know what I mean? There's nothing that sets it apart. That's funny that you feel the same way. So, all right, I'll get a little bit nitpicky here because we're getting towards the back end. So this is time to kind of like nerd out as a sci-fi person, as you know. Well, you might not know, but I think one of my favorite shows of all time and my favorite sci-fi show of all time is Battlestar Galactica remake. Just mind-blowing, really good movie or show. Nothing's been able to match it. But I pay attention to it because it had a pretty low budget at the beginning, and they used fan-made ships that fans were just sending in that they would make in Blender, and they'd say, yeah, we'll use that. You know, people who are big fans of the original. Yeah. So, and I think this is part of the problem why this show won't catch on and be a phenomenon. There is nothing recognizable or memorable about the ships in this movie. I think they were, you know, they tried to go for that, let's just say Warhammer-esque kind of brutalist medieval space like I don't know, building for the ships for the bad guys. The good guys just had nothing. You know, in Star Wars, X-Wings and TIE fighters are just the most recognizable ships in history as far as media goes. So the ships in this show, they're just doing nothing for me. At least splash some color on them, right? I
feel like the reason that X-Wings and TIE fighters are as revered as they are is because they're from Star Wars, which is like the first like sci-fi fantasy to like actually do what it did, right? I feel like if this film came out with those same ships today, no one would care, you know?
You might be right there, but you have to admit the ships were just they were you know what? I'll even throw you a bone here because I know you like the movies. I think the ships in Avatar are more memorable than what was shown in this movie. In this movie, it was just like, here's your cargo ship. Here's your bad guy ship. And it was just like,
I'm with you on that one, yeah.
Don't even put the Imperium flag on it or something. You know, don't even want to put anything like that. When the Dreadnought comes in, I want it to be imposing. You know, when a Star Destroyer comes in, it's imposing.
That's a really good point.
You're scared.
Actually. That's a really good point.
Yeah. So yeah, and you know, it's funny. This movie, and you were kind of touching on this with Snyder and what he does. This movie has everything that I like. You know, I love a hot female protagonist. I love space action. I love high space epics. But for some reason, it's not like you can put all the pieces together and then you suddenly just have a great movie. It's a lot more than just putting pieces together. It reminds me of this girl I knew when I was younger where she had all the parts that I like in a girl. She was smart, funny, you know, good looking, but I never felt this intangible, or not intangible, indescribable love. You know, yeah. I never felt like love for her because there was never like some special extra part there that you can't describe. That's kind of like this movie. It's like checking off all the lists, but it's checking all the pieces off the list, but it's not a coherent whole that has that extra factor to it.
I feel like,
you know?
I'm the inverse, where like it's there's something about this that I really like, and I do sense like there's something more that you said was lacking, but it's just being bogged down by all this other stuff, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so you like the overall just kind of driving force.
I'm a huge sucker for space and sci-fi fantasy. I love that shit so much, you know?
Yeah, and like we were saying, it's not easy to do. I think the one that's out now that a lot of people talk about, and I don't even think it's a like high-level space epic, is The Expanse. A lot of people tell me to watch that. This movie kind of made me want to check that out. But other than that, this isn't something that's tried often. Okay, good. Because you know why? Sci-fi? I was going to say this at the beginning, but it's good that we're kind of getting to it here because it's a little out there. I think sci-fi it creates a premise. And when you're built off that premise, and I know people want to say, oh, every movie ever made starts with a premise, but to sci-fi, it's take something that's normal in life, you get up and go to work, but now create a different premise for it. You're getting up and going into work in the future, in space, and also you can travel back in time. So this creates rules in this new universe that you have to follow, and they build off of that premise. And I think that kind of stilts you creatively and keeps you within the confines of what sci-fi is. And sometimes sci-fi, high sci-fi, let's just say literary sci-fi, is really kind of stuck in this it's stuck in this like technocrat kind of scientifically ruled, difficult to really dig into. You know, it's not as digestible, the high sci-fi. So it's kind of hard to bridge that gap between, you know, elegant, viewable, you know, retainable sci-fi and something that kind of gets your head moving a little bit, something that you really have to think on. So I think the show's kind of on the, you know, it's kind of on the broader, the vaguer side of high sci-fi, but you could tell it wants to go somewhere. It wants to elevate itself, right? So yeah,
there's definitely something there.
There's a lot there to think
there's
about.
something to be elevated, which is a lot more than a lot of films can say. You know.
Well, think about it this way, and this was something I was going to bring up earlier, something that I liked. When the Asian woman with the fake lightsabers, when she was fighting that spider on that planet, and the spider was talking about how the planet was taken from her, and she's taking this kid hostage for this reason. That's interesting. You're talking about something, you know. You're world building with that, you know, and that's just one mining planet and what people are dealing with on one mining planet that they're visiting. So there's scale to it, you know. There's a lot of difference. I mean, for instance, Star Wars had us on a desert planet for basically 3 movies, and then this one for the sequel movies. And this, you know, we got to see a lot of different, cool, interesting places all in one movie. So I'm all right with that, you know?
Yeah. Just you mentioning that scene with the Spider-Woman, you got me thinking, like, you know, that is also the perfect example of what a quest in Starfield should be as well. Like, it's such a bad game, dude.
This game.
Dude, it's such a piece of shit. I dropped it like the minute I played the tutorial. I got in my spaceship, but I couldn't see the outside of it. The moment I landed on the planet and saw what this spaceship looked like, I just dropped it immediately. So it was so bad, dude.
You really didn't like that. But yeah, I think what I was trying to get at is that, you know, there's a difference between a movie like this and shows like The Expanse. Expanse tries to be high-level thinking sci-fi. This is more grand scale, less thought sci-fi, and I'd rather take this over something like The Expanse. I think that's what I'm
with
saying.
You on that. I would take that any day, yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? Kind of the progenitor of a lot of high sci-fi is Star Trek. Star Trek starts with a lot of difficult premises. What if you found a planet where, you know, women were lizards and they were the primary rulers over the planet? But, you know, and the episode starts with a premise and then figures out how humans on the shuttlecraft or whatever you know, deal with that situation. So that's kind of that's a premise, right? And this movie is not that. So I liked it. So I think what we're gonna do,
I think it's time to give our out of 10s or out of 4s, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the first ever Tyson Kid Moyer review episode, I'll give you the honors. So what is your out of 10 for Rebel Moon?
I'm going to give it a decent 6 out of 10.
Ooh.
And
I think
honestly,
that's fair.
If I watched it when I was like maybe a couple beers in, probably a 7. So yeah. It's better than The Last Jedi. I had more fun watching this than Last Jedi, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Although it is funny, I did think it was interesting that there was a guy that betrayed... What's that character's name? In the Benicio del Toro's character.
Yeah.
Betrays them in The Last Jedi, and this character kind of did the same. But it was for different reasons, it seemed. But I think that's fair. It's really funny, because if we're going to do this again, which I hope we do, I don't think we're going to agree too often, but we seem to kind of be on the same page. It's cool, though, because we like this for different reasons, but I give this a very hearty and earned 6 out of 10. as well. That was the same.
Nice.
I was thinking, and if we were talking the way we did earlier about how people are a little generous with ratings, you'd say, oh yeah, it had some problems, 8 out of 10. It's a 6 out of 10 movie. It had some really glaring issues with exposition and dialogue that drug it down. And also, we didn't talk about a lot. This movie was chop-shopped, man. Like, this was chopped up. There was definitely a lot missing here, and it messed with the pacing to a noticeable degree. So there were some fundamental, let's just say, story, exposition, and pacing issues that could have been fixed, but I think the world building and visuals and kind of the heart of what Snyder was trying to do carried along. And what do you think? The acting, right? I'm not a good judge of acting. I don't think that, like, it's really hard to spot terrible acting nowadays in movies. Even the Star Wars sequels, which were god awful, those people acted their asses off for those things. The girl who played Rey, she couldn't have done any better job with what she was given. So
I don't know.
All right, we'll have to tackle that. We'll have to tackle that another time. So
overall, would you recommend this movie?
I'm trying to think of what type of person I wouldn't mind recommending this to, because I think it's kind of fun that we have real life connotations with movies now, where it isn't just about watching the movie. It's about watching the Zack Snyder movie on Netflix, knowing that he was already rebuffed from his Star Wars project. So now you're watching movies under, real life context now. That kind of makes it a little more interesting and adds a little hype or de-hype to it. So I have a buddy who's a big Snyder. He's an OG Snyder hater. So I probably wouldn't recommend it to him, but I would tell him, hey, I watched it. It wasn't bad. Just giving you my objective view on it. If I thought that were possible, I would recommend someone would see it. Someone that I typically talk to about shows and movies. I'd say give it a shot.
If you're someone that likes sci-fi, if you're someone that likes space stuff, it's worth a watch. Yeah, at least it's at least worth a watch.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that being finished up, I thought it'd be more useful to just kind of jump into Rebel Moon instead of talking about what we're doing here. But I think the premise of what we got going is Tyson's a big movie guy. He sent me over as, what is it, Letterboxd or something? What was the thing you used to track all your movies?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? So Tyson's a big movie guy, and I'm an incredible critic, and I'm driven by liking the opposite of what Tyson does. So we're hoping to play off that dynamic and just kind of, if we happen to catch the same thing, we'll talk about it. Or if Tyson says, all right, you watch this and, let me know what you think, then we'll do that too. Because there's some things we got to go head to head on coming up. I need you to watch the Mario movie and see why I fucking hate it so much. And I think it's one of the most insulting things ever released. All right, maybe we'll do it this way. I just gave you something, so then you have to give me something, and then we'll hash it out with that too.
I think you know what I'm going to ask you to watch.
I'm really terrified, to be honest, because I think I know what it is, but we'll leave it as a surprise.
Yeah.
We'll leave it as a surprise. What do we call this? I don't even know. Movie magic. With Kim Moyer and Tyson.
We'll use Ari's water magic from last episode to figure it out.
The last script benders.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. Much appreciated. Rebel Moon, not bad. All right. Enjoy it, folks. And actually, if you watch it, you let us know what you think, whether you agree or disagree. But yeah, I'm in for part 2. I'll even watch whatever stupid director's cut they, purposefully didn't release so that there could be, fake anticipation for it. I'll even watch that. I don't care. I'm in for it. Sophia Patel's hot. What do you want me to do about it? What do you want me to do about it? All right. Till next time.